Southern and Central Africa consist of 20 countries, including the island states of Mauritius, Madagascar, and Comoros off the southeastern coast, and the smallest country in Africa, the island of São Tomé and Príncipe, located off the west coast. On the mainland, Central Africa is usually defined as the Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Cameroon, though Cameroon is often designated as part of Western Africa. Southern Africa includes Angola, Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, as well as 2 countries surrounded by South Africa, Lesotho and Swaziland. One of the most spectacular geographic features in Southern Africa is Victoria Falls on the Zambezi River. Located on the Zambia-Zimbabwe border, the falls are a part of 2 national parks. The falls are the widest in the world, nearly a mile across, with a drop of 355 feet at their steepest point. There are many indigenous groups in Central and Southern Africa. One of these is the San. There are more than 85,000 San who make their home in the Kalahari Desert of Namibia and Botswana. The San were originally nomadic hunters and gatherers. While a few still live this lifestyle, others have found a way to continue to live off the land by working for cattle ranchers. Central and Southern Africa are also rich in natural resources. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has large deposits of copper, cobalt, and many other minerals. South Africa is the world's largest producer of platinum, gold, and chromium, and it has rich diamond mines. The people of Central and Southern Africa are as varied as the landscape. Together, they make these regions 2 of the most distinct and beautiful places on Earth.
This is South Africa. The country sits on the southern tip of the African continent between the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. South Africa is almost twice the size of Texas. It borders 5 nations: Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Swaziland. It also surrounds the tiny country of Lesotho. South Africa is also a place where a social, political, and economic system called apartheid kept white people separate from non-white people. Many white South Africans had been separated from non-whites since 1910, when the country won its independence from Great Britain. But this separation wasn't made legal until 1948, when the all-white South African government voted to support and enforce apartheid. Apartheid laws allowed whites to get top positions in government, as well as good jobs, nice homes, and a high standard of living. But people of African, Asian, and multiracial descent had a lower standard of living and were treated as foreigners in their own country. The apartheid law segregated schools, restaurants, movie theaters, and all other public facilities by race. Non-white South Africans were not allowed to vote or participate in politics. Millions were even forced to live in segregated areas and even relocated to places in distant parts of the country called reserves or homelands. KwaZulu, Ciskei, and Vinda were self-governing reserves. But erosion and poor quality soil made farming the lands difficult. The reserves could not support the people who lived there. Beginning in the 1950s and early 1960s, Nelson Mandela and members of the African National Congress protested against apartheid. Mandela was put in jail for 27 years because he resisted apartheid. During this time, his popularity grew around the world and millions of people protested to demand his freedom. In 1990, protests against apartheid by governments, businesses, and people around the world and within South Africa itself finally forced South Africa's president to demand Nelson Mandela's release from prison and the end of apartheid. Nelson Mandela was elected President of South Africa in 1994, and his government worked to give equal rights to Africans of all races.
Let us forget the past. Let us now work together to make this country a great country.
Since then, many Africans who had been forced to live on reserves and work in low-paying jobs have returned to the cities. They have found jobs as police officers, government administrators, and civil servants. Non-whites have also had access to higher education, opportunities in law, medicine, and business. Equal education, health care, and opportunities for a better life are now available to all South Africans by law. But many people in South Africa are unemployed, and a large number of non-whites continue to live in poverty. Apartheid is a thing of the past, and the changing face of the nation assures South Africa a bright future.
Located on the Atlantic coast of southern Africa, Angola is bordered by the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the north and northeast, Zambia to the east, and Namibia to the south. Angola also includes a small wedge of coastal territory within the Republic of the Congo. Angola's capital is Luanda. Portuguese is the official language of this former colony of Portugal, but people speak dozens of other local languages, including 6 recognized as national languages. Civil war and unrest have dominated Angolan life since the mid-1970s, turning the country into one of the poorest in the world. 4 major ports sit along the coast, but all have been hurt by the fighting and economic decline. Subsistence agriculture employs about 85% of Angola's 12 million people. Some have also found work in emerging industries. Oil production is the one bright spot in the Angolan economy. It is the second largest producer of oil in sub-Saharan Africa. But few have benefited from this. Most Angolans live in extreme poverty. More than half the population is illiterate, and life expectancy is less than 40 years. Angola also has the second highest child mortality rate in the world. Almost 1/3 of all children born there die before they turn 5 years old. But there is hope on the horizon. With a new peace agreement and the help of relief organizations, many are optimistic that Angola will at last be able to refocus its efforts to meet the country's humanitarian and developmental needs.
Zambia is a landlocked country in south-central Africa. It is bordered by the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the north, Tanzania to the northeast, Malawi and Mozambique to the east, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia to the south, and Angola to the west. The Zambezi River forms a natural border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Along one section of the river, part of the Zambezi Valley has been flooded to create the massive Lake Kariba. The lake was formed when a dam was built farther north on the Zambezi to provide hydroelectric power for the growing industries of Zimbabwe and Zambia. The dam, constructed between 1955 and 1959, is still one of the world's largest. At the time of its completion, Lake Kariba was the largest artificial lake in the world. It covers about 2,000 square miles and contains many islands. The creation of the lake forced resettlement of about 50,000 members of the Batonka tribe, a group that had lived for centuries along the Zambezi River. The dam also threatened the area's wildlife habitats. To rescue animals trapped by the rising lake waters, authorities launched Operation Noah in 1960. They rescued more than 5,000 animals from 35 species, including 44 endangered black rhinos. Today, Lake Kariba has become a popular tourist destination, as well as a source of water for the wildlife in the surrounding nature reserves. Mozambique is a country of over 16 million people in Southeast Africa. It borders the Indian Ocean in the east, South Africa and Swaziland in the south, Zimbabwe in the west, Zambia and Malawi in the northwest, and Tanzania in the north. Mozambique's coastline is home to several natural harbors. The Zambezi River provides the country with hydroelectric power. Almost half of Mozambique's people follow traditional religious beliefs. Of the remaining population, 30% are Roman Catholics and 20% are Muslims. Portuguese is the official language, although less than a quarter of the people speak it. Various Bantu languages are most common. Maputo is the capital and largest city. Mozambique is one of the world's poorest countries. 90% of the population lives on less than $1 a day. The economy is driven by agriculture, with most workers living and farming in the country's most fertile areas along Mozambique's main rivers. That often leaves them at the mercy of the weather. Since 2000, the country has been hit by a series of devastating floods and droughts. In February of 2000, severe storms dumped 18 inches of rain on Mozambique's Maputo province. As a result, the Limpopo and Changani river valleys experienced severe flooding. 700 people died in the floods, and hundreds of thousands fled their homes and villages. The disasters came at a time when Mozambique was beginning to turn its economy around. Now the government has had to make new appeals for international assistance in order to reestablish its economy and infrastructure. With hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign aid, the citizens of Mozambique are once again working to recover and rebuild their country. Zimbabwe is bordered on the north by Zambia, on the northeast and east by Mozambique, on the south by South Africa, and on the southwest and west by Botswana. Harare is the capital and largest city. The country's eastern highlands region is a narrow mountainous belt along the Mozambique border, where Mount Inyangani stands as the highest point in Zimbabwe. More than 12 million people live in Zimbabwe. English is the official language of the government, but 2/3 of the people speak Shona, a Bantu language, as their first language. Victoria Falls is one of Zimbabwe's great attractions. This waterfall is almost twice as wide and twice as deep as Niagara Falls. The falls stretch over more than 5,500 feet with a drop of 350 feet into the Zambezi Gorge. The word Zimbabwe means big house of stone. In fact, Zimbabwe's landscape is characterized by ancient rock that is between 570 million and 3.8 billion years old. Zimbabwe's economy is based primarily on agriculture. Its chief cash crop is tobacco. It is also rich in a wide variety of mineral resources. After tobacco, gold is the country's second most important export. But gold is also mined illegally and sold on the black market. Unregulated small-scale gold panning is causing major environmental damage in Zimbabwe, leading to deforestation, the buildup of silt in rivers, and the destruction of wildlife habitats. Making matters worse, drought conditions in Zimbabwe have reduced crop production. Frustrated farmers are increasingly joining the illegal search for gold to help feed their families. Environmentalists have urged the government of Zimbabwe to deal with the illegal gold panning and trade. Together, they are working to improve Zimbabwe's environment and economy.
Botswana is located in central southern Africa. It is bordered by Namibia on the west and north, by Zambia for just a few hundred yards in the north, by Zimbabwe on the northeast, and by South Africa on the southeast and south. Botswana meets Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe in the middle of the Chobe River, so the actual border has never been precisely determined. Gaborone is Botswana's capital and largest city. The Kalahari, a large sand-covered plain, covers 70% of the country. Grass and thorn scrub grow during the rainy season, so animal grazing and agriculture is possible in some areas. The Kalahari is home to large herds of game animals. Antelope such as eland, gemsbok, springbok, and steenbok live here, as well as giraffes, wildebeest, the black-backed jackal, warthogs, and many other small animals. The Kalahari is also home to the San people. The San are descendants of the original inhabitants of eastern, central, and southern Africa. At the turn of the 21st century, the majority of the San's remaining 100,000 were living in Botswana's western Kalahari. The San live in round thatched grass structures. They speak dialects of what are called click languages, noted for the audible clicking sounds that are part of their pronunciation. A few still follow a traditional nomadic lifestyle. Living in small family groups, they possess only what they can carry and move in search of food. They use poison arrowheads to hunt game. Today, these indigenous people are coping with changing population and economic conditions. They struggle to remain independent and to determine their own future in Botswana's increasingly modern society.
Namibia is located on the southwestern coast of Africa. It is bordered by Angola to the north, Zambia to the northeast, Botswana to the east, South Africa to the southeast and south, and the Atlantic Ocean to the west. The country has 4 main geographical regions: the arid and barren Namib Desert, which runs along the entire Atlantic coast, an extensive central plateau, the western fringes of the Kalahari Desert in the east, and an alluvial plain in the north created by the sediment left from a massive lake that dried up thousands of years ago. The capital and largest city of Namibia is Windhoek. Most of Namibia's nearly 319,000 square miles are empty land. The Namib Desert has been arid for more than 80 million years. Its sand dunes are the highest in the world. Germany annexed the country, then known as Southwest Africa, in 1884. After World War I, control passed to South Africa. Finally, in 1990, Namibia achieved its independence. The town of Swakopmund, located on the Atlantic coast, reminds inhabitants and visitors of Namibia's days under German rule. An oasis-like city of green palm trees and old historic buildings, Swakopmund is a seaside resort between the ocean and the desert. Fishing has become a major part of Namibia's economy because the Atlantic waters off the Namibian coast are clean and rich in nutrients. Even oysters are raised in fish farms in Swakopmund. These oysters are exported to large markets in South Africa and Europe. North of the city lies Etosha National Park, one of the best-known game reserves in the world. Each year, during the brief rainy season, tens of thousands of pelicans and flamingos can be found feeding on the algae that blooms here. Despite its harsh desert environment, Namibia is a place of natural diversity and beauty.